Before we get started, a word of warning: this video will contain spoilers for future seasons of House of the Dragon. You have been warned. This is a requested video that a couple of you have asked for, and the question is, what if Daemon Targaryen and Caraxes survive the Dance of the Dragons? In the Fire and Blood canon, Prince Daemon riding Caraxes fights Prince Aemond riding Vhagar in the battle above the God's Eye. During the battle, Daemon unhooks himself from Caraxes, leaps onto Vhagar, and plunges his sword through Aemond's eye. The two dragons alongside their riders then crash into the water below. Vhagar sinks to the bottom of the lake, whereas Caraxes is able to crawl out of the lake but dies shortly afterwards. Aemond's body is found, but Daemon's body isn't, leading some both in-universe and out-of-universe to believe that Daemon Targaryen survived, but the majority of people believe that he did in fact die during the battle. But what if he didn't? Now, as unlikely of a scenario as this would be, let's look into it anyway. Caraxes, barely alive, was able to pull himself out of the lake, with Daemon Targaryen battered and near to death himself clinging on. The two lay there in the shores along the God's Eye. Caraxes was missing a wing and had his stomach ripped open, and Daemon was suffering from more than a dozen wounds. The last thing that Daemon saw before falling unconscious was a silhouette of a dragon descending from the sky. When he awoke, he was in Harrenhal. Nettles, riding Sheepstealer, had managed to save him and slowly nurse him back to health. He had been unconscious for days, and when he tried to leave his bed, he stumbled and fell to the floor. His leg had been shattered. He would never be able to walk without the assistance of a cane again. Likewise, his sword arm had also been badly injured. He would never again be the great warrior that he was once. Prince Daemon spent the rest of the dance inside Harrenhal, drifting in and out of consciousness and developing a terrible fever that would not leave. Likewise, Caraxes also struggled to get better. With the help of Sheepstealer, Nettles had been able to cauterize his wounds, but he would never fly again. Curiously though, as Caraxes slowly started to recover, so did Daemon. By the time Daemon had healed, the dance was over. Now he was faced with what to do. Should he return to King's Landing and claim his birthright, the Iron Throne? After all, that's what he always wanted, wasn't it? Nettles, on the other hand, begged him to come to Essos with her and leave all of this behind. They could be free from the politics of the realm. They could be free from the endless Game of Thrones. They could be whoever they wanted to be. Daemon fought on this for a long while. The realm had taken everything from him, and now it was on the verge of collapsing. A weak and sickly boy sat the Iron Throne, surrounded by opportunists. The Red Kraken was still rampaging across the western coast unchecked. Yes, perhaps he should leave it all behind. After all, he was just so damn tired. There was just one problem. That sickly boy was his son and heir. Everything he had ever wanted, to be the father of a dynasty which sat the Iron Throne, had come to pass, but now it was in danger of unraveling. But could he take this throne away from his child? I mean, technically his child would still be in line to inherit the Iron Throne after Daemon's death, but could he do it? Could he usurp his own son? I mean, his claim was better, yes, but still. No. He had another idea. Daemon thanked Nettles for her offer but rejected it. She accepted this and mounted Sheepstealer and made for Essos, and Daemon set out for King's Landing. Thousands of shocked onlookers lined the streets to watch him enter the city, as proud and as tall as he had ever been. It took every ounce of his strength to keep this masquerade up, and by the time he entered the throne room, he was in absolute agony. He announced to the assembled lords and ladies that he had returned, but not to take the throne from the true king. He then bent the knee before his son and pledged his fealty. Rising, Daemon announced that he would guide and protect his son, that he would rule as regent until his son Aegon III came of age. Thus the regency of Daemon Targaryen began. His first obstacle was the hand of the king, Sir Tyland Lannister. Daemon had never liked Sir Tyland, and he was a Green. He was a supporter of Aegon II. There was nothing that Daemon would have liked more than to mount Sir Tyland's head on a spike, but he knew that that was not a smart decision, for this would undoubtedly alienate the Lannisters and plunge the realm into yet another civil war. And well, all you had to do was look upon Sir Tyland's disfigured face and gaze upon the work of Rhaenyra's torturers to realise that perhaps he had suffered enough. And Daemon had to admit Sir Tyland was a capable hand. It would seem that his once fiery temper had dulled a bit in in his old age. But Daemon proved to be a capable regent. Although he would never be considered the best regent the realm had ever had, he was certainly wise. Whenever he held small council meetings or audiences in the throne room, he made sure that his son was there as well, although the relationship between the two was cold. Daemon kept pushing Aegon to be a warrior and dragon rider, and Aegon kept pushing back. The two often shared meals together, but would sit in silence while eating. Daemon both loved and resented his son, but for better or for worse, he was Daemon's legacy, and Daemon would do whatever it took to forge Aegon into a true king. Meanwhile, Caraxes remained at Harrenhal, still too weak to be moved. Daemon ordered that a garrison be placed at Harrenhal to protect Caraxes, while sending the few remaining dragon keepers he could find to Harrenhal in order to help Caraxes recover from his injuries, which he would in time, and when he finally recovered enough, he was slowly led from Harrenhal to Duskendale under heavy guard, with Daemon himself leading the escort. He attempted to get his son to come as well, but Aegon had adamantly refused, locking himself in his own room. When they finally arrived in Duskendale, Caraxes was led onto a barge, which set sail for Dragonstone, as Daemon would not dare bring Caraxes into King's Landing. Caraxes would remain in Dragonstone for the rest of his life. He would never fully recover from his injuries. After this, Daemon would dispatch Lord Alan Velaryon first to the Stepstones to deal with the pirates, and then on to the west to help the Lannisters deal with the Red Kraken. After these two foes had finally been dealt with, the realm was at peace, and Alan Velaryon garnered a fearsome reputation. Likewise, under the counsel of his two daughters, Daemon would marry his son to Daenerys Velaryon, thus securing his bloodline. Baela and Rhaena would go on to become close advisors to the regent. Thanks to Daemon's regency, he was able to keep certain opportunistic lords like Unwin Peake in check, and events such as the Kingsguard coup would never happen. But there would be one event that would happen which would change the realm forever. For when Alan Velaryon returned from his latest voyage, he brought with him a gift. That gift was Viserys Targaryen, younger brother to Aegon III and youngest son of Prince Daemon Targaryen. The arrival of Viserys greatly uplifted Aegon's mood. He was no longer as somber as he had been, and he even took an interest in the governance of the realm, which up until now he had shown very little interest in. Likewise, Daemon's spirits were also greatly uplifted, for Viserys was everything his brother was not, exactly what the realm needed, a balance. For the first time since his battle with Prince Aemond, Daemon was truly happy. The realm was at peace. He had two strong and healthy sons, both of whom had wives, both of whom would soon start to have children. The realm was secure. House Targaryen was secure. His family was secure. His legacy was secure. All that remained now was to ensure that the House of the Dragon had dragons. The remainder of Prince Daemon's regency came and went without issue, and when it was finally time for him to step aside and let his son take the throne, Daemon personally crowned Aegon III in a second coronation. That night, a small feast was held, not in honour of the king of course, for he would never allow such a thing. Instead, it was held as a thank you for Prince Daemon. The next day, Daemon left King's Landing for Dragonstone. From the deck of his ship, he looked out upon the city, for he knew he would never see it again, and he remembered himself and Viserys as children playing in the yard. He remembered his mother and father joking and laughing at the dinner table. He remembered the great King Jaehaerys sat upon the Iron Throne, and he remembered Rhaenyra, and as he remembered, a single tear ran down his cheek. Daemon would spend the rest of his days at Dragonstone, dividing his time between attempting to breed more dragons and writing his memoirs. Eventually, Caraxes would lay another clutch of eggs, but would die of exhaustion not long after. After the death of Caraxes, Daemon wept, his own health deteriorating rapidly, and just shy of his 60th birthday, Daemon Targaryen died peacefully in his sleep. His funeral was a small affair, with only his sons and their wives and his daughters and their husbands being present, and thus Daemon Targaryen, the rogue prince, passed from life to legend. His legacy would live on in the lives of his children, and his life would be remembered in his memoirs, which would be turned into a book called House of the Dragon. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have another what if scenario you want me to talk about, then don't hesitate, comment it down below. And until I see you all again, may you spend a half hour in heaven before the devil knows you're dead.